In the high, airless halls of the Timelessness, before the first leaf had sprouted or the first mountain had been hewn from the bones of the earth, the great music of the Ainur set a theme of beauty and harmony that was intended to define the existence of all things. But as the ages of the world unfolded, a darkness far more intimate than the malice of Morgoth began to fester within the hearts of the Eldar themselves. A darkness that would eventually lead to the most tragic and horrific events in the history of Arda. Welcome to Echoes of Middle-earth, where today we are delving into the deepest scars of the Elven race to recount the 3 times that the Firstborn turned their blades upon their own kin. These acts, known as the kinslayings, were not merely battles, but spiritual catastrophes that stained the land of Aman and Middle-earth with unrighteous blood, fulfilling a prophecy of woe that would pursue the elves until the very end of their time in the world. To understand the origin of this internal rot, we must look back to the noontide of Valinor, a period of unparalleled glory when the 3 kindreds of the Elves dwelt in the light of the 2 trees. It was in this era that Fëanor, the mightiest of the Noldor in skill of word and hand, fashioned the Silmarils, 3 jewels that contained the blended light of the silver Telperion and the golden Laurelin. These jewels were the absolute peak of elven craft, but they also became the object of a greedy and terrible love. When Morgoth, the black foe of the world, slew the 2 trees and stole the Silmarils, he did more than rob the elves of their light. He ignited a fire of madness in Fëanor that could only be quenched by blood. Distraught by the slaying of his father, King Finwë, and the loss of his treasures, Fëanor stood before the Noldor in Tirion and swore a terrible oath. He and his 7 sons vowed by the name of the Creator himself to pursue with vengeance any creature, Vala, demon, elf, or man who should withhold a Silmaril from their possession. This oath was the catalyst for the first great tragedy, the kinslaying at Alqualondë. Fëanor led the Noldor northward, seeking to return to Middle-earth to hunt Morgoth, but he realized too late that he could not cross the vast sundering seas without the aid of a great fleet. He turned to the Teleri, the sea elves who dwelt at the haven of the swans, and demanded their ships. But Olwe, the prince of Alqualondë, refused, for the Teleri had never listened to the lies of Morgoth, and they held their white ships to be the work of their own hearts, as precious to them as the Silmarils were to the Noldor. Fëanor, driven by his boiling wrath and the fear of delay, did not accept this refusal. Instead, he commanded his host to take the ships by force. In the lamp-lit haven, among the arches of living rock, the Noldor drew their swords upon their longtime friends. Thrice the people of Fëanor were driven back by the Teleri, who defended their harbor with slender bows, but the vanguard of the Noldor was eventually succored by Fingon and the foremost host of Fingolfin, who rushed into the battle before they understood the cause. The Teleri were overcome, and a great part of their mariners were wickedly slain. The Noldor then stole the white ships and rowed them north, leaving behind a haven defiled by blood and the weeping of Wienin, the Lady of the Seas, for the fallen mariners. As the Noldor marched further north into the bitter cold, they were met by a dark figure standing high upon a rock. Some believe it was Mandos himself, who delivered the prophecy of the North. He warned them that because they had spilled the blood of their kindred unrighteously, they were now exiles under a curse. "For blood ye shall render blood," the voice declared, "and beyond Aman ye shall dwell in death's shadow." The oath that Fëanor and his sons had taken would drive them, yet it would also betray them, snatching away the very treasures they sought and turning their well-begun works to evil ends through the treason of kin unto kin. Though many quailed at these words, Fëanor hardened his heart and pressed on, eventually landing in Middle-earth at the Firth of Drengist, where he committed yet another act of betrayal by burning the very ships he had killed to obtain, leaving his own half-brother Fingolfin to perish in the grinding ice.
For centuries after their arrival in Middle-earth, the Noldor fought the Long Peace and the Great Wars against Morgoth, and for a time the memory of the kinslaying was lulled by the necessity of survival. But the curse was not dead, it only slept. It was reawakened by the hero Beren and the elven princess Luthien, who against all odds wrested a single Silmaril from Morgoth's iron crown. This jewel eventually passed to their son, Dior Elukil, who took up the kingship of Doriath after the death of his grandfather, King Thingol. Dior was the fairest of all the children of the world, being of threefold race, Idan, Eldar, and the divine Maiar. He wore the jewel set in the Naglamir, the necklace of the dwarves, and the rumor of its brilliance spread like fire through the scattered elven lands. When the sons of Fëanor heard that a Silmaril burned once more in the woods of Doriath, the oath they had sworn in Valinor woke again from its slumber.
The second slaying of elf by elf took place in the heart of winter, when the 7 sons of Fëanor descended upon the 1,000 caves of Menegroth. They sent messengers to Dior to demand the jewel, but Dior returned no answer, leading Celegorm to stir his brothers into a full-scale assault. Doriath, once protected by the girdle of Melian, now lay open to its enemies because the power of the queen had withdrawn following the death of Thingol. The battle within the cavernous halls was most grievous, a thing never to be forgotten. In that bloody encounter, Dior slew Celegorm, but he was himself slain in return, along with his wife Nimloth. The cruelty of the attackers reached a new depth when the servants of Celegorm seized Dior's young sons, Elured and Eluren, and left them to starve in the forest. Although Maedhros repented of this deed and searched long for the children, they were never found. And Doriath, the most beautiful realm east of the sea, was utterly destroyed and never rose again. Yet the sons of Fëanor still did not gain the object of their desire. A remnant of the people of Doriath escaped the slaughter, and among them was Dior's daughter, Elwing. She bore the Silmaril away and fled to the mouths of the river Sirion by the sea. There, she joined with the survivors of the fall of Gondolin and wedded Eärendil the mariner. For a time, it seemed that a new hope might blossom on the shores of Middle-earth as the people of Sirion built ships and took to the waves under the shadow of Ulmo's hand. They believed that the Silmaril brought a blessing and healing to their houses and their fleet, and they were determined never to yield it, especially while Eärendil was away upon his long voyages searching for the last shore. But the curse of the Noldor was relentless, and for the third and final time, the Eldar turned their weapons upon their own kind. Maedhros, the eldest of Fëanor's sons, had initially withheld his hand after the destruction of Doriath, but the knowledge of his unfulfilled oath returned to torment him and his brothers. They sent messages of friendship mixed with stern demands to the havens of Sirion, but the refugees there would not surrender the jewel that Beren had won and Luthien had worn. And so, in the last and cruelest of the slayings, the sons of Fëanor came down upon the people of Elwing. The battle was one of sorrow and confusion, with some of Fëanor's own people standing aside or even rebelling to aid the Elves of Sirion against their own lords. Maedhros and Maglor were victorious, but the cost was the total ruin of the havens and the deaths of their last 2 brothers, Amrad and Amras. In her despair, Elwing cast herself into the sea with the Silmaril upon her breast, preferring the abyss to the hands of her kinsmen. In a moment of divine intervention, Ulmo bore up Elwing from the waves and gave her the likeness of a great white bird, and upon her breast the Silmaril shone as a star. She flew to the ship of Eärendil, and together they sailed at last into the west, bearing the jewel as a beacon of hope to the Valar. Thus, the light that the sons of Fëanor had slaughtered their kin to possess passed forever beyond their reach, placed in the heavens by the command of the gods. The Three Kinslayings represent the darkest thread in the tapestry of Tolkien's mythology, a warning that even the highest and most beautiful beings are capable of the most wretched evil when they allow greed and pride to govern their souls. In the end, the Noldor became the Dispossessed, losing their lordship, their treasures, and their peace through the very actions they took to preserve them. The blood spilled at Alqualondë, Menegroth, in Sirion remained a stain that could not be washed away until the world itself was broken and the Eldar passed into the twilight, leaving Middle-earth to the dominion of men. The tragedy of the Elves is a reminder that the path to darkness is often paved with the desire for light. Fëanor sought to preserve the radiance of the trees, but in doing so, he created a darkness that strangled the will of his people. As the stars of Menelmacar continue to watch over the world, they remain a sign of the last battle where all things shall be remade. But until that day, the echoes of the kinslayings linger in the wind, a sorrowful song of what was lost when the Firstborn became their own worst enemy. Thank you for joining us for this journey into the darkest moments of the Elder Days, here on Echoes of Middle-earth. If you found this exploration of the kinslayings insightful, please like and subscribe as we continue to unearth the complex history and deep lore of Tolkien's magnificent world. Until the stars shine again on our meeting, may your heart stay true and your path be guided by the light that never fades.